A little while ago, Tiago Romero 6444 left a comment on one of my videos asking if I could make starter Pokemon into legendaries. And I thought that sounded like a pretty cool idea, so shout out to Tiago because that is exactly what we're gonna do in this video. So I've given legendary designs to about half of the currently existing starters in this video, which is a whopping 14 of them. And if you would like to see the other half become legendaries as well, be sure to leave a like on this video and a comment to help it do well so we can do a part 2. Also, big shout out goes to my guy R. Gray Wind for drawing the artwork of all of these designs, and as always, you can check him out with the links in the description to check out more of his stuff. With that said, why don't we begin with my best boy and the starter that's in the thumbnail, Cyndaquil. If little Cyndaquil was actually a legendary Pokemon instead, this is what it might look like. And maybe it's a good thing that it's not a legendary, because as a legendary, it looks terrifying, but like also in the coolest way possible. If this guy burned me to a crisp, I would honestly consider it an honor. Anyways though, this legendary version of Cyndaquil was designed using a little bit of Typhlosion as a base, and overall it was themed around the concept of an exploding volcano, which is why he looks so pissed because he's erupting with rage. I'm not really planning on changing the types of these designs from the actual starters either, but with the way this one turned out, I feel like Fire Dark type would be an amazing type combination for it to have, and would also just add to the coolness of this design even more. Which is all being made possible by today's sponsor, Manscaped, and their new limited edition white colorway of their Lawnmower 5.0 razor. I have talked about how good this razor is before, but now it also comes in this fresh white colorway that is absolutely buttery. Despite the different color though, it still has all the same great features, like skin-safe technology to prevent nicks and cuts, it's literally waterproof, it has multiple blade heads to customize the kind of shave you want, it has a built-in LED light that can be toggled on and off so you won't have pesky hairs that can hide from you anymore, and it's also rechargeable and cordless with a convenient battery light indicator. I literally do not know of a better razor myself personally than the Lawnmower 5.0, and these limited edition white ones are expected to sell out quickly, but if you hop on it quick with my link in the description, you can grab one for 20% off with free shipping when you use code HoopsVGM at checkout. And that also helps to support the channel too, which is amazing and super appreciated. So give that a look and get yourself a new razor, and a big thank you to Manscaped, as always, for supporting the channel. Now we're going to take a step back a bit though, and look at the OG3, aka the Kanto starters. Starting with Bulbasaur, this is what we came up with for a legendary design, and this one is based purely on Bulbasaur itself, and it also has lore, because what's a good legendary Pokemon without some lore? I decided to give it a golden bulb to not only make it feel more legendary, but also to add to its backstory, as its concept would be that its golden bulb is said to give life and sprout forests wherever this Pokemon goes. Next up is Charmander, and in this case, I obviously had to base its legendary design a little bit more around Charizard, and what I ended up doing is basing it on the rarest and most strongest forms of Charizard, because rare and strong are two pretty key factors of legendary Pokemon. Also, combining its shiny form with its Mega X evolution, which is what I did here, is just an amazing sounding idea in general too, and I think the end result ended up looking as cool as advertised. And with the influence of Mega Charizard X in particular, I think you would also have to go ahead and make this guy a Fire Dragon type as well, which also helps to really ring home that legendary aura. For Squirtle, its legendary design is actually more of a mix of all of its stages, which is pretty cool in my opinion. I could see this guy wreaking havoc on a small town like Pacifidlog or Moss Deep, where it uses its giant water cannon to send tsunamis and other large waves towards the town, and it would be up to you to track down the source of the waves and stop this Pokemon from causing all this havoc. Also, as someone who has been an advocate for making Blastoise a water steel type thanks to its literal steel water cannons, I would be tempted to do the same to this guy as well, but I'll go ahead and let you guys decide in the comments whether or not you think this design looks like it could be a steel type or not. When taking cute things like starter Pokemon and turning them into big bad legendaries, I'm sure you can also imagine that you might end up with some goofier looking results too. And I feel like that idea ended up being embodied pretty well in the designs that we did for Mudkip and Rowlet. With Mudkip, I feel like this design looks like what Mudkip would imagine itself looking like as a legendary Pokemon in its own head, which I honestly kind of love, and with Rowlet, I had a little bit more of a unique concept in mind for it. I thought that between its ghost typing as Decidueye and Rowlet's own round body, that a wispy, ghostly looking orb type design with all of that cute Rowlet charm intact could make for an interesting concept. I really like the idea of keeping all the cute features of the starters, but then blowing them up into these intense, strong looking legendary designs, and I feel like this design is a good example of that idea. To me, it basically looks like a Grim Reaper Rowlet. It's still as cute as ever, but it also looks like it's ready to snatch your soul straight out of your body at the same time. And honestly, that kind of dichotomy is what Pokemon is all about. Next up though is another one of my favorites from this batch, and that is Tepig. I decided to base this one more off of Emboar, and the idea was to turn it into a more literal boar, because I liked the idea of giving it a dark color scheme, because that gives it more aura and more like of an intense intimidation type factor that helps it to feel more legendary in my opinion, and in making it more like an actual boar, that gives us a real reason to do that, since boars are usually pretty dark in color. It also gives it this ruthless warlord type of vibe, which is also what Emboar is originally based around, but now it's just cranked up another 1 or 2 notches, which works perfectly for a legendary Pokemon. And while you could leave this design as a fire fighting type, and it would honestly probably work just fine, Fire Dark type is also once again another great option that really captures this new design in a great way as well, in my opinion. And while we are on the subject of fire types, let's go ahead and talk about Fennekin, because Fennekin is another one that I was eager to tackle for this concept, as I have been a well-known critic of its evolution Delphox for a while, and I thought that this would be another cool opportunity to explore another alternate reality of Fennekin's potential. This was the end result of that train of thought, and it came out looking just about as mystical as I hoped it would. I wanted to keep all of those mystical, witchy vibes that this family of Pokemon have, because I really do like that about them, but instead put it all into Fennekin's body instead of Delphox's. I also decided to base it around its shiny coloration, since Fennekin has one of the best starter shiny forms out there, and overall I think it came out looking pretty cool. This kind of design would have also worked really well, in my opinion, as just a standard final evolution for Fennekin too, and it's also all the more interesting to think about with Pokemon Legends ZA on the way and the focus soon being turned to the Kalos region and all its Pokemon, because you never know what's going to happen, and it'll be interesting to see if the Kalos Starters gain any kind of new forms in that game, either through a Mega Evolution or maybe potentially something else that we might not be expecting as well. Along with Fennekin though, I of course had to do the other Kalos Starters as well, and this is what we came up with for Chespin's legendary form. It's kind of based around the line as a whole. Once again, it uses the shiny coloration of this family, because they also have great shinies too, and in particular, it also emphasizes the fighting type that Chestnut has, as this thing is really just a big ol' brute that truly lives up to that grass fighting typing. Froakie is then up next, and Froakie's legendary form, while based on Froakie itself, did naturally end up with some similarities to Greninja too. However, in what might be a little less gross to some, legendary Froakie trades Greninja's tongue scarf for a foam scarf, and likewise, this guy is not a water dark type because he's a ninja. Instead, he's a water dark type because he's going to use that foamy scarf to eliminate his enemies, as that would be its signature weapon that it would use for nefarious and sinister reasons that would allow it to live up to that partial dark typing. Another water type that we're going to cover today, though, is Piplup, and for Piplup's legendary design, I decided to base it around Empoleon, since I love Empoleon, and it's quite possibly my favorite final starter evolution. This design gives it more of an armored look and really emphasizes the steel typing that isn't brought out quite as much in Empoleon's design. And overall, this is one of my more favorite designs from this bunch, and I think it turned out pretty well. Fuecoco is now up next though, and with Fuecoco, I wanted to do another design that used that dichotomy I talked about earlier of a squishy, cute little starter Pokemon being blown up into a big, bad, intimidating legendary. And this is what that resulted in for Fuecoco. It still has that fire ghost type of its evolution, which is where its ghostly little flame things come from, and as I just alluded to, you can clearly tell that this one is based around Fuecoco in particular. And just looking at this design, I can also imagine the perfect scenario for it as well, where in the games you learn from some townspeople about a menacing, ruthless, bloodthirsty Pokemon that they're worried is going to terrorize their village, so you go to investigate and you find out that this ruthless Pokemon the townspeople were talking about is just this big, friend-shaped guy, kinda in a similar sort of vein to Ogerpon now that I think about it. Regardless though, I love the idea of it being a giant Godzilla-looking thing like this that could destroy everyone if it wanted to, but he's just way too squishy and friendly looking to ever hurt a fly. I love the idea of that genre of legendary and would love to see something like it happen for real someday. Turning the clock back one generation though, we are next going to talk about Scorbunny, and if Fuecoco looked all squishy and friend-shaped, then Scorbunny is probably the opposite, because this is what Scorbunny could look like as a legendary Pokemon itself. I think this one in particular does a really good job of making the starter to legendary jump, and it honestly reminds me a little bit of Deoxys, with those long legs and that soulless look in its eyes that looks like it's about 5 seconds away from absolutely obliterating your entire team. It might still be a bunny, but this is a bunny who's got that legendary aura about it and basically knows that it is stronger than you. And honestly, the longer I look at this thing, the more intimidated I get. So it definitely passes the vibe check. And now we're going to go ahead and jump back up to Generation 9 and look at Sprigatito next, and what it could look like as a legendary as well. This one I knew I wanted to come from Sprigatito directly, while keeping Meowscarada's dark typing, because let's be honest, we just want to have more quadrupedal, non-humanoid looking starters, even if it's now trying to be a legendary Pokemon instead. It also reminds me a bit of the legendary beasts if they more overtly looked like cats, and yeah, I know they're based on cats, but they're called the beasts and not the cats for a reason. So this feels to me like a more true cat version of the legendary beasts, which I think is cool, and it also is another good example, just like with the Fennekin design from earlier, of what a Sprigatito evolution could have looked like if it stayed on 4 legs. And in my opinion, it's even more of an example why that would have been much better than what we actually got. That is going to do it for this video though, so if you would like to see the rest of the starters turned into legendaries in another video, be sure to leave this video a like and a comment to help it do well so we can make that happen. Also be sure to subscribe, and you can check out my Pokemon remixes wherever you get your music if you would like to further support the channel as well, because that is super easy to do, and it honestly helps out a ton, and it's super duper appreciated. With that said, I'll see you guys soon with another new video. Thanks so much for watching this one, and until then, as always, I will smell you guys later.